So this morning I would like to talk to you about a book that I read. This book was very recently recommended to me and actually sent to me by my son, who works in a secular context. Anybody that he deals with, apart from the odd smattering of Christians here and there, is secular. And so he found this book particularly interesting and helpful. He recommended it to me, and as I read it, I thought, wow, wouldn't it be nice to tell our Sabbath school members about this book? It might be something that it helps them, is beneficial, enjoyable for sure, it's a good read, but also quite enlightening and eye-opening. And so the book, which isn't terribly long, about 10 chapters, became part of the I have read this list of books on my shelves. The book is written by EV pastor Glen Scrivener, and here's a picture of Glen. He doesn't look very old. I think he's about 51 actually, so a bit of a boyish look. When I say EV, that's evangelical. Now, Seventh-day Adventists are also evangelical, so his belief system, his high view of Scripture, his desire to lead people to Jesus, the sense of mission, all of that he holds in common with us. We have our distinctives, of course, and a seventh-day Sabbath is not one of his, nor would our interpretation of apocalyptic prophecy be part of his belief structure. But nonetheless, all the basics of Christianity, and most certainly the gospel, he would share in common with us. And so I think one can be pretty comfortable in reading a book by Glen Scrivener. So in his book, which is called The Air We Breathe, he has made a valiant attempt to show the secular world that they are more Christian than they think. Now, whether we believe in God or not, we all value freedom, kindness, progress, and equality, he says. He goes on to say, but far from being natural or inevitable, these values are the direct result of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. When I lived in Australia, he is an Australian, or was to start with, now he lives in the UK. When I lived in Australia, I never noticed how it smelt. The eucalyptus trees methylate the atmosphere. It's like a constant cold remedy, soothing vapors carried upon the breeze. When you're born into it, it's no big deal. Now though, when I fly back into Sydney, the first thing I notice is the warm, sweet air. If you live in the West, Christianity is like this. It's the air we breathe. Christianity infuses all our beliefs, all our assumptions, our morals, our goals, our intuitions. Like air, it is all around us, life-giving and, to most people, invisible. Many people object to this claim, saying, I'm not a believer, but don't be so sure. I'm fairly certain that these values resonate with you. Equality. You believe in the equal moral status of every member of the human family. Compassion. You believe a society should be judged by the way it treats its weakest members. Consent. You believe that the powerful have no right to force themselves on others. Enlightenment. You believe in education for all and its power to transform society by persuasion and argument rather than by force. Science. You believe in the ability of science to help us understand the world and improve our lives. Freedom. You believe that people are not property and that each of us should be in control of our own lives. Progress. You believe we should reform society or of its former evils. In response, some may say, oh sure, I prize these things, but they aren't beliefs. Those are obvious, natural, and universal values. Everyone holds to equality, compassion, and the rest, right? Wrong. Those values are not at all common in pre- or non-Christian cultures. They have come to us specifically through Christianity. When we study the beliefs of the ancient Greeks or Romans, we discover a frighteningly alien world. Plato and Aristotle, those fathers of Western philosophy, believed in inequality. They were convinced that some people were born to rule and others were born to be ruled over, or in other words, to be enslaved. They considered women, barbarians, and slaves to be of inferior value to freeborn male citizens. Endorsing the practice of infanticide, Aristotle said, "Let there be a law that no deformed child shall be reared." In that society, justice did not mean liberation of the poor and the oppressed, not at all, or the equality of people, regardless of gender, race, and class, but the very opposite. At the core of ancient thinking was the assumption of natural inequality. Justice meant enforcing inequality, and wisdom consisted in knowing your place in this steep hierarchy of being. Many consider Christianity a spent force today, yet they live within a moral universe that makes nonsense without it. Criticisms of the church abound, and many of them are entirely valid. They are often aimed at us with a zeal that is best described as religious. But that is the point. These criticisms are blasts from a world that has borrowed our foundations and even our ammunition for their attacks. Since this is the case, we need to reframe the clashes that we witness in the world between the secularist and the believer. The deepest clash between belief and a purely secular worldview does not occur between Christians and non-Christians. It occurs within the Western secularist. That's what the clash is. Because the secularist is a believer too. They navigate their lives by roughly the same stars that we do: equality, compassion, consent, and so on. On a daily basis, they walk according to these convictions, and yet, even as they look up to such supernatural values, they insist that they are standing on purely natural ground. They claim to have a practically atheist account of the world, even as they live by basically Christian assumptions. Consider the clash and listen to these statements. This is the clash. We are clever chimps, but possess inviolable human rights. We are biological survival machines, but have a duty to care for the weak. We are nothing but mammals, but we must honor each other's sexual boundaries. We are the heirs of brutal evolutionary history, but we should spread our influence by persuasion and never by force. Our brains evolved merely for the purpose of survival, but we can trust them to fathom the scientific mysteries of the cosmos. Survival of the fittest is the deepest explanation for human life, but pursuing the idea of master race is an unconscionable evil. We are clinging to an insignificant rock, hurtling through a meaningless universe towards eternal extinction. But the arc of human history bends towards justice. We all tend to believe the latter part of these statements. Surely, we all believe the latter part of these statements. In fact, whatever your average Westerner says regarding their religious views, we all share a remarkable consensus on those beliefs. And such beliefs actually shape our day-by-day living. Whatever our convictions about the existence of God, the afterlife, angels or souls, we venture out into the world and stake our lives on freedom, kindness, and human value. The deepest clash between belief and secularism is not a clash between churchgoer and non-churchgoer. The ultimate clash is inside the non-Christian, because none of our lives draws its meaning and sustenance from secular sources. That's the point. Whether we know it or not, we all depend on Jesus. I thought it was a great book. And probably you will agree with me, it's called The Air We Breathe. It's only, I don't think it's even a year old. It came out in 2022. And, you know, it hits a few hard punches when it comes to upholding the so-called superiority of a secular worldview, realizing that it's all based in Christianity anyway. I had to laugh as I read it. I thought, how ironic, and what a good hit for the Christian faith. And to have someone who could write like this with a background in philosophy and Christian theology, I thought it was a win for the Christian faith in this day and age. So I commend it to you. I recommend it to you. You can buy it through Amazon. I have no connection with Glen Scrivener. I just thought the book was worth having. So that's why I've brought it to you today.